The warm aroma of Sunday dinner filled the air in the Johnson family home, a modest two-story house in Atlanta that had been the heart of the family for decades. The long wooden dining table, polished and set with dishes of cornbread, collard greens, fried chicken and mac and cheese, had seen countless birthday celebrations, holiday feasts and quiet family moments. But tonight there was no warmth. The air was thick, heavy with tension, and the usual laughter that accompanied family dinners was nowhere to be found. At the head of the table sat Evelyn Johnson, the matriarch of the family. Her dark skin was smooth despite her 65 years, but the lines at the corners of her mouth were deeper tonight, her expression tight. She clutched her fork, not eating, but turning it over and over in her hands like a worry stone. Her youngest son, Marcus, sat to her left, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his jaw clenched. Across from him, his older brother, Anthony, leaned back in his chair, his eyes sharp, his face full of anger. "Marcus," Anthony said, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "You had no right to make that kind of decision without telling me or Mama." Marcus slammed his hand on the table, causing the silverware to clatter. "You weren't there, Anthony. You don't live here anymore. You're in DC, working your corporate job, showing up for holidays and birthdays, acting like you know what's best for this family." Anthony sat forward, his nostrils flaring. "It doesn't matter where I live. This is still my family. You can't just sell the house without consulting me. This house is Mama's legacy. It's our legacy." Evelyn flinched at the word sell, her hands tightening around the fork until her knuckles turned white. She hadn't said much since the argument began, but her eyes darted between her sons, her heart aching. She'd raised them to stick together, to love one another no matter what, but tonight the rift between them felt like an ocean. "I didn't want to sell the house," Marcus said, his voice lowering slightly, but still charged with frustration. "Do you think this was easy for me? Do you think I wanted to put a for sale sign out front? But Mama's medical bills are piling up, Anthony. The insurance isn't covering half of what she needs. I've been handling it all on my own while you've been off living your life." Anthony's face softened for a moment, but it hardened again just as quickly. "And you think selling the house is the answer? This house is where we grew up, where Mama and Daddy built their life together. Where are we supposed to gather as a family? Where are we supposed to bring our kids when the time comes? You can't just erase all of that." "Don't talk to me about erasing things," Marcus snapped. "You erased yourself from this family the moment you moved out and left all the responsibilities to me. You have no idea what it's been like taking care of Mama day in and day out. You get to swoop in and play the perfect son, but where are you when I'm driving her to doctor appointments? Where are you when I'm up at 2 a.m. because she's in pain and can't sleep?" "I'm doing my best," Anthony said, his voice rising. "Do you think I don't care? I send money every month. I call every week. Money isn't enough," Marcus shouted, standing so abruptly that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You think you can just throw cash at the situation and that makes everything okay?" "It doesn't work like that, Anthony." The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Evelyn, who had been staring down at her plate, finally looked up. Her sons froze under the weight of her gaze. "That's enough," Evelyn said quietly, but her voice carried the kind of authority that only a mother could wield. "Sit down, Marcus." Marcus hesitated, his chest heaving, but he sat down. Anthony leaned back again, folding his arms, but he didn't speak. Evelyn placed her fork on the table and clasped her hands in front of her. "Do you two think this is what your father would have wanted? For his boys to be at each other's throats like this?" Both men lowered their eyes at the mention of their father, who had passed away 5 years ago after a long battle with cancer. He had been the glue that held the family together, the man who always knew how to smooth over arguments and bring everyone back to love. "This house is important," Evelyn continued, her voice trembling slightly. "But it's just a house. It's the people in it who matter. And right now, I'm ashamed of the way you're treating each other." Marcus's shoulders slumped, his anger melting into guilt. Anthony rubbed a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. "I know you're both trying to do what you think is best," Evelyn said, But you're not listening to each other, Marcus. You've been carrying a heavy load, and I'm grateful for everything you've done for me. But Anthony's right. This decision should have been made as a family. Marcus looked up, his eyes filled with regret. I didn't want to burden anyone else, Mama. I thought I was doing the right thing. And Anthony, Evelyn said, turning to her eldest son, I know you've been helping in your own way, but Marcus is right too. Money isn't the same as being here. You two need each other, and I need both of you. Anthony nodded slowly, his expression softening. I should have been more involved. I'm sorry, Marcus. Marcus glanced at him, the tension in his face easing. I'm sorry too. I should have told you what was going on. I just didn't know how to ask for help. Evelyn smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. That's all I've ever wanted, for my boys to look out for each other. Your father used to say, family isn't about who's right or wrong, it's about finding a way forward together. Can you two do that for me? Both men nodded, their gazes meeting for the first time without hostility. Marcus extended a hand across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, Anthony took it. The gesture was small but heavy with meaning. We'll figure this out, Marcus said quietly. Together. Together, Anthony echoed. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, relief washing over her. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still bills to pay, decisions to make, and wounds to heal. But for now, the Johnson family was on the right track. They were reminded of what mattered most: love, understanding, and the unbreakable bond of family.